Hi, and welcome to another episode of Kuntarkis. My name is Michael Yon, and this is an introduction to the art of self-rejuvenation. So, welcome Kuntarkis, and what is self-rejuvenation?
Well, Michael, rejuvenation can be many things. People like to think rejuvenation is all about just rejuvenating the actual human body. And most people go out and they exercise, they change their diet, over many years, they try to reshape their body because they've abused it through certain habits of life. And by the time they finish, they're sort of happy with what they've got or what they can see in a mirror. That is not rejuvenation. That is simply ego trying to feel better about itself. Real rejuvenation, when it comes to self-rejuvenation, is about the spiritual side as well as the physical side. And we have to learn to understand that to start self-rejuvenation, we can't do it simply from the physical. We have to go to the spiritual side. And if we learn to understand who we are, that we are immortal and we are forever, and the only thing that perishes eventually is our human self, which returns to the earth, goes back to dust. But the actual spirit of who we are goes into a vibration, learns, lets go, and replans their next life or their next incarnation into human existence. A lot of that knowledge has never been given to people. And that's why I can say that most people on this planet don't have an actual reality of understanding the inner self. Yes, people go along to courses, they go along and learn from different teachers, but even teachers over the last 30 years don't actually teach the real essence of touching, not just connecting to your mind, but learning to connect to the essence of your own soul. People today are taught that the soul, when you perish physically, vaporizes, dies, gone. And that is so far from the truth. Why anyone would teach such lies, I have no understanding of that. The soul is one of the most precious parts of your existence as a human being. It does everything, absolutely everything. It gives you the wisdom, it gives you the knowledge, gives you the know-how. But what prevents that? Because we're taught that the human body or the human brain is everything. And what we don't realize, it fools us. We lose the connection to the most vital part of our existence, and that is the soul. The spirit, on the other hand, when you go to sleep, it comes out by projection, goes into spirit world, and experiences whatever you are about as a physical being. And if there's any limitations, it's created by the human self, which in turn creates the limitations on your own spirit, never on your mind, never on your soul. Now, rejuvenation starts with connecting directly to your soul. Every single human on this planet has over 4 quadrillion cells of living energy. That's what makes you up as a human being in everything, from the spiritual to the physical. When you learn to connect to the cellular structure that makes up who you are literally connecting to your soul. So what I'm going to explain is how I actually achieved the knowing of the energy of living consciousness. Back in 1988, between 87 and 88, I was diagnosed with terminal lung cancer. Never smoked. Occasionally, you'd throw a smoke in your mouth, but never was a smoker. But what's interesting is I took on a job as a sales rep, then a sales executive for nearly 20 years. I travelled all around Melbourne, all around Sydney, Darwin, most of Queensland. And during that time, I would, sit with owners of their stores to actually talk about new products, the company that I may be working for. I would try to sell those products to them, take orders. And at the same time, back in those days, people could smoke in actually restaurants and cafes. Today it's unheard of. But back then, it was what everyone else did. You're sitting so close, you're taking in secondhand smoke. Scientifically, it's a proven fact that you have more chance of getting cancer than the person actually smoking the cigarette. And that's a proven fact. And I did. And the only time it came out, even though I know I was suffering something, was when I did a trip up to Cairns. And when I got back to Mackay, and the next day I was so crook. I could not believe how crook I was. My throat was on fire. And I had to be in that plane for 2 hours, coughing my head off. It was so embarrassing. It really was so embarrassing. And when I got off the plane, the first thing I did when I went home was have a hot shower and went to bed. I couldn't eat. I couldn't touch food. 3 days later, I was sicker. I wouldn't stop coughing. It was unbelievable. I was sweating. It was like I just poured gallons of water down into my mouth, and I would sweat that much and be saturated. I went to the doctors, and he told me that I had pneumonia. He said he wants to do some x-rays. So we did. And what he discovered was the left lung was highly contagious with cancer cells and a tip on the right, just a small tip. His recommendation was, after talking with other so-called doctor experts, was to have the lung removed, but go on to chemotherapy, remove the lung, and they had some sort of drug at that time. I can't remember the name of it, but it was a new sort of wonder drug, some sort of treatment. And I looked at him and I said, no. He looked at me, and this is going to really get you, while he was smoking. While he was smoking in his surgery. And he looked at me and he said, well, Mr. Horenborough, he says, if you don't do what I'm asking you to do, he said, you won't live. He said, maybe between 8 and 10 months. And I just coughed the entire time that I was there. And he said, I'm going to hospitalize you. I said, no, you're not, because I despise hospitals. Absolutely despise them. And I said, no, I'll heal myself. And he laughed at me. And I walked out. And I sat in that car, company car, and I actually cried. And as I cried, I was just in so much pain and coughing so badly. Over the next 3 weeks, that's all I did was cough and sweat, cough and sweat and spit up blood. It was just unbelievable. And I thought to myself, I'm not going to make it. So I moved down the Gold Coast. I got rid of all the stress in my life. I gave notice to where I was working with a brilliant job. And I decided that I'm going to heal myself or die. And I remember one morning, I woke up and I looked up at the ceiling and I wondered, what the hell? How come that ceiling is so red? It's a white ceiling. And that was the blood that I was actually coughing up and spitting through the night.
Onto the ceiling?
Onto the ceiling. It was that powerful. And my bed was all covered in blood drops. It was just unbelievable. It looks like a war zone. And I got up and I looked in the mirror and I was as white as a ghost. Just absolutely white as a ghost. And the pain was getting worse and worse and worse. And I remember the next day when I woke up, I had this very beautiful entity called Nadishua, who I met for the first time, my guide. And Adishua said to me, my son, he said, I know who you are, and I know the body of flesh was my son. But I know that you come from a far, far place, but you now live within the body, and it's your choice if you wish to die or live. I cannot make that decision. But if you choose to live, you must gain the power of self and change and connect to your mind and connect to your soul. And I listened to what he was saying, and I felt really relieved in a way that this really beautiful entity would take the time to come and talk with me when I was feeling so low, because I've never had that in my physical existence, where I could never speak to anyone, but I was always helping others. And if you ask them something, they would say, look, I'll talk to you later, mate, I've got to go. It's quite interesting about human nature. I remember doing this meditation about 2 days after he actually came and saw me. And as I was sitting at the end of the bed with my legs crossed, I just sat there and I stared at this big, long, shelfy type wardrobe that I bought. And I'm just thinking how lovely it actually looks and how nicely it's made. And as I'm staring at it, it's like a window of time suddenly appeared. And it's like I was no longer looking at the actual cupboard. It's like I was looking into the sky, just a cloud. Everything was misty. And I just closed my eyes. And the words that came out of my mouth were very interesting. I said, yes, I want to live. I want to let go of what I no longer need, but I don't know how. I need help. And I said, please, I need help. I want to talk to my soul. And I just sat there for a bit longer, and suddenly I felt as if I was as light as a feather, completely like I was in another zone of consciousness. And I opened my eyes up, and all I could see in front of me was like a shimmering light that seemed to have some sort of shape, but no shape at the same time. And I asked, where am I? And the voice that came through was mine, but not from my lips. And it says, you are everywhere. And I said, what do you mean I am everywhere? It says, you are a part of all things. And I said, who are you? And it said, I am you. I said, are you my spirit? Or are you my soul? And it said, I am your soul. And you are sitting within the soul. And as I looked around, I couldn't see anything outside of what this soul was. Pure energy, but moving constantly, like constantly in a flux where it's constantly moving, turning, spinning.
Similar to the living energy we were talking about.
Yes, exactly. But it's like I was sitting in a brain. That's what the strange thing was, because I could see all these electrical little lines that were everywhere. And every time the voice of the soul, which was me, spoke, all this light would shine and really go bright, like it would be emanated with more living energy. And then it said to me, do you understand the meaning of living energy? And I said, to a point. Do you want to learn what living energy truly is? And I said, yes. In that moment, I went totally blank. And as I opened my eyes, I was in total blackness, floating. And I said, this, and it said to me, this was the universe before the energy began. blackness, in the making of becoming. That's all it said. And then suddenly I was back where I was originally sitting within this energy called my soul. And I said, I need to talk to living energy. And it said, why? Because I said, someone that came to me a few days ago, he's my guide and he calls himself Narishua. And the energy said, yes, the soul is yes. I know of this one. He is your guide. Well, he said I need to speak to the cellular structure of my actual being so we can start the healing process. And the soul taught me how, very simply. And then I did that for the next 2.5, maybe 3 months. Every day, twice, 3 times a day. I saw my lungs perfect. I saw my lungs growing, expanding, all the rot out of the left lung, clearing the lung. And what's really interesting, Michael, because it's a physical body, every day for the next 11 days, I think it was like I had diarrhea. And do you know what that was?
The cancer.
The cancer. Cleaning it out of my system. And after that, I suddenly felt real. I felt alive. I felt light, like I've let go of things that I've been holding on to for so long, mainly because of the way Roman lived his life. And it felt really, really good. And there I never looked back.
And you were feeding yourself along the way, obviously.
What I did have, I mixed up a special formula of vegetable juices through a blender. Added filter water. Mainly the vegetables were beetroot, carrot, Lebanese cucumber, capsicum, and red cabbage, and pawpaw leaves. Pawpaw leaves are a known fact to actually destroy cancer cells. It's a known fact. But everybody in the scientific world doesn't want to look at that because it's a cure to cancer cells.
There's a lot of money in cancer.
Yes, there is. Now, what's really interesting, Michael, is it didn't take very long after that to start the real healing process. And I noticed that I was drinking more and more juice, where originally I was only having, like, say, at the beginning, probably about 1 full glass a day. I couldn't stomach anything else because I had no solid food. And that is all I had. But what I did have, which was recommended to me, was spirulina. And I started taking spirulina as soon as I moved to the Gold Coast. And from then, I never looked back. And within about, say, 10 to 11 months in total, I felt absolutely brilliant. I could actually breathe without feeling pain. And I am sure there are people out there that would say, I understand how you felt, that have had actually cancer or do have cancer, of like lung cancer. It's pretty bad. I mean, every piece of cancer is bad. But let me say this. What I did discover, and this is absolute, total truth, and you can prove it to yourself. All human disease comes from negative emotions through negative experiences that we hold on to. And then we reinforce those negative experiences of emotion with foods, bad foods, for years and years. Smoking, years. Drinking, years. Sugary soft drinks, years. All the bad stuff. And then we eventually have body breakdown, genetic breakdown. And then we mutate certain cells in certain areas of our body. And we have cancer. And once it sets in, if we don't deal with the emotions, which is the first thing we have to deal with, recognize the emotion behind the experiences, even if those emotions come from our parents. Because you have heard many, many people over the years around the world say, well, you know, my father or my mother had cancer and she died at 50. And now my brother just passed over and I've only got 2 years to go. Am I going to die? We are so conditioned to believe that we end up creating it. You've heard me say this so many times. Thought is a very powerful thing because it's actual energy, living energy, becoming thought consciousness.
And that's where we start, right? We start with the thoughts.
Absolutely. We have to start with the thoughts. You know, let's say we have lung cancer, let's just say, and we want to heal it. One of the best techniques, the most powerful techniques, if you don't have the understanding of connecting with your soul, is actually placing both hands over your lungs. And if you believe in the light, which is living energy, feel yourself breathe it in and send it internally throughout your body. Try not to concentrate on the affected area because then you're going to have expectations. Pour this energy throughout your entire being and just say at the end of it, when you're finished, is this energy that I call living energy, I say unto it now, I release the emotions of why I created this disease and I let it go because I only live in perfect health now and forevermore. And I dissolve it into a nothingness, never to return, because I have now released the emotion by recognition. I love who I am and I love all others. And that's all you have to say.
Yeah, so it's in your thoughts and therefore it's in the words that you say and the intention that you have when you're saying these words.
Absolutely. 100%. And it does work if you believe. It's like anything you do. You play table tennis, Michael. You play professionally.
Professionally.
If you don't believe in your abilities, you're never going to win. But if you believe that you have what it takes, as long as you're not too egotistical, but you believe, then your game will always be better. And as you believe more, your game will get better and better. And if you fail at one game, don't take it personally through emotion. Take it as a lesson of life, that there will always be someone better. It's like I had to learn when I did this tournament down in what's it called, Melbourne, so long ago, this guy nearly killed me.
In martial arts tournament?
Yeah. He was like a vicious raptor. You know what a raptor is, a dinosaur.
Yeah.
And I could not control his strength. And yeah, I lost. And I walked up to him and I bowed to him and I said, thank you. He asked me, what for? I said, because you taught me a very valuable lesson, that there is always someone greater than you, and greater than them, and greater than them. It never stops. But you can always make yourself greater from that lesson.
By believing, and we were talking about this in a previous, somewhere, like, as you were saying earlier in this episode, like, as opposed to fixing things in a physical way, it all started, and therefore it all must start again with the non-physical, with, for instance, the simple thought, and then moving to words, to affirmations, to actions, to then having a change, including like believing and then being good at, for instance, your sport.
That's true, Michael. Yes, very, very true. And now it comes back to this. Now that I've explained that, if you want to rejuvenate your body, don't just go to rejuvenate your face just so you can look good and be accepted and forget about what your body is. You have to work at your body. That's what it's all about. It's teaching you to work. If you want something, you have to work at it. It's not saying that you have to go out there and have blood, sweat and tears every moment of your existence, but you have to put action into it. I mean, I'm physically 70, but I feel like I'm 30. And when I train like a, 20-year-old. Sometimes I say to myself, I'd like to see some 20-year-olds do the exercise that I do. The only reason that I am capable of doing that is because I believe in who I am. I believe that I have the right to have a strong body, even at this so-called 70 years of age. I also believe that I have a right to be quick at 70 years of age. I also believe that I have a right to be fully flexible at 70 years of age.
You have a right to believe that you're not in any way old.
That's right. Exactly. And that's rejuvenation, because what you're doing, Michael, is by saying those words physically, you are creating a verbal expression of energy out, but also inwardly.
Now, we were talking about expression and how you can do it, and sometimes it can be a little too logical versus being passionate. And I just had the insight then that if you have the right affirmation, which can be a very simple affirmation for however you'd like to rejuvenate yourself, or in general to rejuvenate yourself, if you've got the words, you can then put in the passion, the sound, the feeling. You can act it until it's real, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's up to you. It really is up to the individual. You can go and get a mentor, a trainer, and yes, they'll do a fantastic job. But there's one of the things that is missing, and that is the most vital link to self-rejuvenation. What do you think that is? Releasing the emotion that created your body the way it is and how you want to improve it. Because as we become physically older, we are so highly conditioned into our jobs. And so many people work at their jobs, 5 days a week, 6 days a week. Some work 7 days a week. And they got no time to do absolutely anything for themselves. And they wonder why their bodies become overweight, why their bodies become apathetic when it comes to movement. They're clumsy, they're heavy. And they say, oh, that's just old age. It's not, Michael. We have the ability, let's say me, at 70, to move our body in such a flowing way that looks like someone doing it like a ballerina. We can do that, and we can feel good. And we can feel good how we stretch our body sideways and down without saying, oh my God, my knees are about to fall out, or my hips are about to pop, or my back's about to break.
So, Kuntarkis, I agree with you about emotion being the real reason behind a particular illness, and I've even got a book on it by an Australian writer called Annette Nuntil, who's not around anymore, but she wrote a book called The Body is the Barometer of the Soul. And if people don't have that book and they know, and they believe you've said that some kind of emotion is behind their particular illness, how do they discover this emotion if they're just starting fresh and they're not sure?
Okay. Go back into their childhood. Look back. Sit peacefully without anyone around you. And if you can't find what it is, talk to your mother or your father and say, look, I really want to know, what was I like as a child? I got blanks and there's things I can't remember. And they'll look at you and they'll say, why do you want to know that? I want to know, was I a clumsy child? Was I a slow child? Or was I sort of hyperactive? Or was someone always trying to bully me and I had fears. Ask these questions about yourself and ask your parents, because those emotions of those experiences become a belief system within your genetics, and they can affect you so badly throughout your life. And most of the time we bury it year after year after year after year until later on in life it causes illnesses and eventually could lead to disease. And then we go to a doctor to say, look, I'm not well, I'm really crook. And then he finds out we have bowel cancer. Okay. Bowel cancer is about not letting go of the past, wanting to hold on, whatever the emotion may be. There's a lady by the name of Louise Hayes, and I believe she's either in England or America now, and she'd be well into her age, but she wrote a book called Knowing Your Body, and also understanding the metaphysical side of illness. And I don't think a lot of those books are around anymore, but I found my books like that only a little while ago, and I gave them to my son because he wanted them. And I'm trusting as he gets a bit older, because he's not 5 yet, he'll look at them and realize that the metaphysical side of life has a very deep understanding of emotion and why we create human disease from that emotion. And unless we can discover why and resolve it, which is quite simple, it's not a hard process. It's called forgiveness of others that may have caused it, and also of ourselves being so hard on ourselves over years and years. So once we discover what the emotions are all about, especially the negative side of emotion, which is very prevalent in human society, we can actually learn to move on and learn to rejuvenate, not just our physical body, but the essence, the spirit of who we are. When the spirit is full of life, it reflects on the human self. When the human self is full of life, it reflects on the spirit. It works both ways. And then your limitations of life or your old beliefs, which are no longer needed, just dissipate into a nothingness, like mystical man would say. And that's the reality of the truth.
Yeah, so even if even if we're unsure about our emotion for our illness, we could just have an affirmation starting with, I forgive myself for la la la. Like it could be simple, couldn't it?
That is very true, Michael. Make it simple, very true. And if you want to get if you want to get affirmations, there are so many books around today. And some are small, some are long. In my book called The Book of Knowledge, I Am Alien, there's 80 affirmations that I've placed into that book. And I'm sure if the listener or a reader would look at that, they could choose one and use it for several months and change it around a bit. But those affirmations, when they're positive, have a very deep impact verbally, because it's energy when you express it on your human self as well as your spiritual self. But it's how you express it that is the real secret.
Exactly. It's how you do it. Put heart into it, right?
Passion. That's what you said to me, Michael. Passion. Feel passion. Talk to yourself. Like, you know how I said to you, we spoke about that. Walk around the house when something's bothering you. And if there's no one around, talk about what you're feeling to yourself. Because I've done that for a long time when I'm by myself. And I tell you something now, it's literally opened up a door to the knowing and discover the answers. Because all the answers are within you. We only have to knock at the door and keep asking the questions. And when we're ready in ourselves, the door will open and give us what we need.
Your talking to yourself can become higher and higher frequency. As in what you're talking, it can lead to, like you said about the doorway, to higher and higher levels of consciousness.
Absolutely. And that's what existence is all about. Not this pathetic little human existence we live in, this third vibration, and we just get up every day and go to work, and then we come home, we're too tired to do anything. We won't touch our wife, our wife won't touch our husband. We can't wait to get the kids to bed because they're aggravating us, or we love them so madly, but we still can't wait to get them to bed. Right? Then we try to sit down, then we realise it's 9 o'clock or going on 10. We've got to get up at 6, so we go to bed. We can't sleep because we're so stressed out. Well, then we look for drugs to put us to sleep. And eventually they have the opposite effect anyway.
And if we have a free moment, we want something to distract us.
Yes, we do. Watch a movie. And the worst thing is watch a movie that's violent before you go to bed. That's why kids won't sleep. They're watching too many violent movies. And parents are allowing them because they feel, well, that's the only way to keep them distracted.
Yeah, and it's harder to control kids these days, so they watch what they want to watch. Yeah. So, Kuntarkis, can you tell us some more about like the interesting? How much did you talk to your soul?
I talk to myself actually. Well, when I'm writing, I play out the parts, the actors, right? You know, I play out Mystical Man, I play out Philip Dustin, I play out Frank Hartley, I even play out Jasmine Forbes, right? I play out their parts to see how it sounds. So I'm playing all the different actors. And I even visualize in my own mind which actors on this planet would actually play these parts. Now, I'll tell you very quickly, I had this experience last night. And I still haven't told my darling wife because every time I go to, little man distracts us because when he hears us sort of having fun talking, he likes to make noise. So it just breaks the energy and we can't do it. But what it was, I listened to this disc last night on relaxation, and it really put me down really well. But then I woke up, and I took about, say, probably half an hour to go back to sleep. I said, that's interesting. That's not normal. For me anyway. And suddenly I was in this room, like an office, and it looked like a massive, is it a boardroom table? What do you call those? Yeah, boardroom table, yeah. And it was oval shaped, quite large, had all these chairs, and all these people were sitting around, all these men and these women. And probably only half the seats were taken. And over on my left, who was sitting there? Tom Cruise, the man I've been trying to contact to actually look at my book called The Dream Assassin Volume 1 and 2, who I've been trying to make contact with. I even had some imposter pretend to be Tom Cruise. And he had me going there for a little while, but then I said, I want you to ring me. And he did. Instantly knew there and then that wasn't Tom Cruise. But what's interesting, I discovered through this experience, as I was sitting there, I was very quiet, and Tom looked at me and he said, so Roman, he said, when do I get a book? I said, when do you want it? Instantly I said that back to him. And he said, well, now. You know, you want me to look at the book, don't you? I said, yes, because that's the way Tom Cruise apparently would talk. And I said, yes. And he said, well, I said, all right. I said, but it's going to come in an unusual manner. And he said, what do you mean? I said, it's going to appear in front of you. And he looked at me and laughed, thought it was funny. And I put my hand out to the left and I said, produce the book, please, Living Energy. And the book just materialized right in front of him. And he literally jumped back in his chair. And he said, how did you do that? He said, are you a magician? I said, sort of. And he said to me, how did you do that? I said, well, you see, my body is back in Queensland, Sunshine Coast, Australia. And I'm here, but I've created a body to meet you. And he just stared at me. Really, really stared, and it got his curiosity. And he said, you and I have to talk in private. That's what he said to me. You and I have to talk in private. And then there was a discussion going on while he was looking at the book. he had the book open, he's flicking through the pages, looking at different things. And he looked up at me, and just as he was about to speak, the whole scene changed. I was in a house, someone's house, and this guy came to the door, and I heard this knocking, and I said, "Where's the front door?" So I found the front door, and I opened it, and have a guess who was standing there?
Tom Cruise?
Tom Cruise. And I said, "Right." And he said, "Well, can I come in?" I said, "Yeah, sure." And he put his hand out to shake my hand. And I said to him, I said, "Well, I would like to shake your hand, but I think under the present circumstances, which I'm taking recognition of this so-called BS COVID-19, I said no." And he said, "Oh, all right." And he came in. And I noticed there was something very different about him. And he walked in the house looking around. He said, "Is this your house?" I said, "No, it's not actually." He said, "Who owns it?" I said, "I have no idea." And he looked at me, and I looked at him, and I said, "Hang on. No, this isn't right." I said, "You're that imposter that I saw on my mobile phone." And he looked at me and he said, "I'm not an imposter. I'm Tom Cruise." I said, "No, you're not." I said, "No, you're not." I kept saying it, "No, you're not." And what's really interesting is it's like his face shapeshift a little bit. And I suddenly saw the real person. And I said, "Well, there you are. You're not Tom Cruise." And I woke up. And what it was showing me was I got to meet Tom Cruise, because to me, he must have been in the physical world because it was daylight in America. And it was nighttime in Australia. And my body was in bed, and yet I was physically sitting nearly opposite him, but a bit further away. And I literally, through magic, manifested a brand new hardcover, The Dream Assassin, Volume 1. And I could hear him flicking the pages. And as he spoke to me, I could see his expressions and everything. And I could see the other people. They were working on something on their laptops. Other ones were writing, and they were taking notes of everything that was being said. And it was like it was going to be some sort of business arrangement. Then suddenly I was drawn right out of that, and I was in a house, and this imposter came. And very interesting, isn't it? Interesting experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I'm glad that you shared all that. When I asked before, I was asking about the conversations that you had with your soul. Because did you say that you practically spoke for like half an hour to an hour 3 times a day for quite a while? Can you explain?
Okay. When I had that first encounter, that was something that I didn't try to do. I did in a way, but I didn't. It just sort of happened more. And I think that was like I kept saying, I want to heal my body. I want to understand why this body that I now live in created this human disease. I wanted to understand, and I want to connect to my soul. And suddenly, as I said to you, the light was there. This energy was just there. And then the energy took me into the blackness, into the emptiness, to where everything first began. I mean, we're going back probably hundreds of thousands of trillions of years ago. And the soul showed me what the reality was of the universe. And it wouldn't even have been a universe. There was no universe. It was just an empty black hole with nothing in it. But it began. And that was the interesting part. Now, after that, I did it very regularly. I did it morning, lunchtime, and evening before I went to bed, 3 times a day. And as I sat there, I communicated with my soul again, and my soul came. I was sitting within my soul, the energy of my life force. And I communicated why. And I discovered why it was what it was. and I learned how to heal through living energy that our human bodies are made up of. We are not the body, and we are not the spirit. We are living energy. The soul is not higher than living energy. It is a part of who we are in its own totality, from the physical right up to the soul. But beyond that is living energy. And within living energy, consciousness exists. The soul is living consciousness because it has been evolving on this planet for nearly 1 million years of its own earthly evolution. The earth itself has been here much longer, but I'm talking about as humanity. Now, what's interesting, over a very short period of time in communicating within my soul, remember, within my soul, I learned to communicate with that living energy. And by communicating, that living energy will give us exactly what we wish for or ask for. If we come from a true, honest heart, and that's what we're asking, not sort of thinking, oh, I'd really like to maybe sometime heal who I am, or maybe I'd like to discover what happened to me, 35 years ago. When we talk like that, that's just, how would you say, we're unsure of what we're trying to ask for. It's only when we come from the heart in pure love do we actually make that connection.
And how to come from the heart is to intend to come from the heart?
Intention. Pure intention. And the other way to express with pure intention is verbally. Because within your verbal expression, which is energy, you can link the heart to your verbal expressions, which I know that you understand that, Michael.
Well, I think it's really valuable for me and everyone that this is expressed again and again, and because even if I can explain it, I'm not always doing it right all the time, and I think it's, yes, an important thing to understand.
We learn by our mistakes. And I don't think there's a being on this planet, no matter who we are, will do everything 100% perfectly. We learn by our mistakes. But I believe what's happened here on planet Earth is we have got all caught up in a rut of existence. And we have an energy that is, to me, I call it evil, who are trying to control humanity. Just like what's happening today. If we look around the entire, planet, governments are trying to control the people. There are dictators. There are governments who simply are doing little things over many years to take away the power of the masses. And they do it with fear, is what I spoke about, I think, in one of the last episodes. Fear also prevents us from self-rejuvenation because we feel we don't deserve it. And that's the sad part, because we all deserve it if we come from the heart.
I guess we just got to, if we're not doing it, then make a start. And then if you stop, make a start again. Keep at it. That's got to be it, right? Because, it's like facing a fear. If we leave it there and we don't face it anymore and we are constrained by that fear, it'll just continue to exist, even lifetimes, until we simply face it, until we face it fully. But still, just make a start and then again, make another start.
Absolutely. And the hardest part when we create, let's say belief systems, those beliefs become a condition and they also become embedded within our human brain on our logical side. And when a condition becomes, when a belief becomes a condition, you find it very hard to change. And that's why you hear people say all the time, I don't like change. I don't want to change. I'm happy with what I'm doing. And yet you can see their whole life is a mess. But you don't interfere because that's what they want. And that's what the soul gives you.
I was just going to say that. Exactly.
And it's like your cellular cells, which is living energy. And you've got over 4 quadrillion of them. That's a lot. If you keep saying to yourself physically that, look, I'm never, ever going to change. And I've heard people say that, Michael, exactly like that. And get used to it. This is the way I am, and that's that. Well, then what you'll be given is exactly what you've asked for. You will never have the ability or the power of self to make changes in your life that could be highly beneficial. And that's sad. I know people right at this moment, lots of them, that fear change. And I know lots of people that if you say to them the truth, they will twist it to put you down and blame you. And I've had people who come along in the past to consultations and they've said to me, you're the problem. My life was fine till I came and saw you. And I laughed my head off.
I bet you don't. I bet you're very kind to them regardless.
I am. I am actually. I said, look, the interesting factor is, why did you come to me to begin with? Well, I wanted to find out why I am the way I am. And I said, well, you know me and you've been told by other people to come to me. Is that true? And they say yes. Well, then they would have also said to you that I will only speak the truth. I will not give you fantasy in any way or illusion in any way whatsoever. I go directly to the truth of what is holding you back. At the moment, you don't want to accept that because it makes you feel inferior or intimidated. Is that true? Well, I am feeling very intimidated, they'll say, because you're telling me something that is my private business. But how will you ever change if you don't look at it? And how will you ever change if someone gives you the knowledge to make those changes and you won't do it? Well, that's my prerogative. Well, you're never going to get through a person like that. They have to figure it out for themselves if they ever do. You don't keep struggling to get them to understand what you're saying is truth, because they have got a mindset of not changing no matter what. And only when the penny drops will they make those changes or try to. Everyone grows and changes in their own space and time. My job is simply to share knowledge, whatever that knowledge may be. And if it helps, then that's beautiful. If it doesn't, that's also beautiful because I know eventually it will.
So, Kuntarkis, do you have any final words you'd like to leave us with as it relates to self-rejuvenation?
Yes, probably I do. Yes, I think I do. One of the things that I discovered was if you combined your thoughts to change, so you're willing, and if you combined a correct diet that you have to change to survive, you will find a little bit of exercise goes a long way, and you will find the outcome will be of great benefit. But if you don't add those 3 or 4 formulas together, and you only try to do one, like fix up your physical, then from what I've seen, there's not much change. You can't heal disease by just exercise. And I've had people say it to me that they feel better But you know what the sad part is? They still die. So you've got to combine not just your physical, but you've got to combine your spiritual in all factors. And when you do that, then you've got the biggest chance in the world to change and to heal. And I will say this, Michael, healing is not an art. Healing is an everyday cycle. We should be doing healing on ourselves every day because we are living energy existing within a human vehicle, not the other way around.
Mm. And we didn't even speak about that. Every day and even right now, you're healing yourself, aren't you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. What I actually do is I communicate with every essence of my being. When I go and train today, I did a big workout this afternoon. And as I'm exercising or whatever I'm doing, I am also doing an affirmation. I'm talking to myself about my body. I'm talking about my mind, and I say things like, I am so happy in this moment that I am connecting the essence of who I am with not just my spiritual self, but my physical self, with my mind and with my soul. We have to learn somewhere in our existence as a human being to connect to our spirit with full knowledge, connect to our mind with full knowledge, and connect to our soul with full knowledge. And when we do that, everything that we have been taught, whether it is a certain way of life or through religion or some sort of society, it will fall to the wasteland as if it never existed. Because our understanding of creation, which is totality in living energy, will open up doors that we never thought was possible to an understanding that the universe is beyond all measure. And so are we, Michael.
Wow. Well, thank you so much, Kuntarkis, for all that you've shared.
You're very welcome.
If you like what you hear, check out some of our other episodes. And if there's an episode you think we should do that you haven't heard yet that's along our ballpark, then let us know. Or for any other reason you'd like to contact us, simply email kuntarkis@gmail.com. My name is Michael Yon. Thanks so much for listening and stay tuned for the next one.